Introduction. The leader's mind is built, not born. Most people think leadership is about charisma, about presence, about the ability to walk into a room and command attention. They're wrong. Leadership begins in a place no one can see, in the architecture of your thoughts, in the quality of your mental models, in the way you process reality when no one is watching. Think about the last time you were overwhelmed, information flooding in from every direction, emotions rising, pressure mounting, decisions demanding immediate answers. Now imagine someone standing in that same storm, completely calm, not because they feel less, not because they care less, but because they think differently. That's what this audiobook is about. The difference between you and the people who lead movements, build empires, navigate chaos, and make decisions that reshape industries isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't even experience. It's the operating system of their mind. Leaders have mental models that function like weapons when they need to cut through complexity, like shields when they need to protect their clarity, like lenses when they need to see what others miss. And here's what matters. These models can be learned. Your mind right now is running on default settings, patterns installed by chance, by culture, by the noise around you. Most people never question these patterns. They spend their entire lives thinking in ways that were given to them, not chosen by them. But you're here because something in you knows there's another way. The quality of your leadership will never exceed the quality of your thinking. This audiobook is not about speaking like a leader. It's not about acting like a leader. It's about thinking like one. When you transform how you think, everything else transforms with it. Your decisions become sharper. Your emotions become tools, not obstacles. Your vision becomes clearer. Your presence becomes undeniable. Not because you're performing, but because you've built an internal structure so solid that people feel it without you saying a word. By the end of this experience, you will understand the mental frameworks that separate reactive people from strategic leaders. You will know how to elevate your perspective when everyone around you is drowning in noise. You will learn to think in systems, to see patterns, to make decisions without fear, and to lead yourself with the same clarity that great leaders use to guide thousands. This is not motivational hype. This is cognitive transformation. The leaders you admire, the ones who seem impossibly calm under pressure, who make complex decisions look effortless, who see opportunities where others see chaos, they all share something. They've built minds that others haven't. And now you will too. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Elevation Principle. There's a reason generals study battles from hilltops, not because they're avoiding the fight, not because they lack courage, but because altitude provides clarity. When you're on the ground, all you see is dust, noise, the soldier in front of you, the weapon in your hand, your heartbeat in your ears. But from elevation, you see the entire battlefield, the patterns, the movements, the strategy unfolding in real time. This is the first principle of leadership thinking, elevation. Most people live their entire lives at ground level. They're inside their emotions, trapped in the immediacy of every moment. Something happens, they react. Someone speaks, they respond. A problem appears, they panic. Leaders think from altitude. You cannot lead what you cannot see clearly. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of a crowded market, people everywhere, voices overlapping, movement in every direction. It's overwhelming. You're reacting to everything, understanding nothing. Now imagine rising above it, slowly, higher and higher until you're looking down at the entire scene. Suddenly you see the flow, the patterns, the structure beneath the chaos. You understand what's happening because you're no longer trapped inside of it. That's elevation thinking. When you're stuck in ground-level consciousness, every emotion feels like truth. Every thought feels urgent. Every problem feels insurmountable. You're inside the storm, and storms don't make sense from the inside. But leaders train themselves to rise, not to escape, not to disconnect, but to see. Elevation doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being controlled by what you feel. Think about the last time someone made you angry. In that moment, you weren't thinking. You were reacting. Your mind collapsed into the emotion. The anger became your entire world. You couldn't see past it. You couldn't think around it. You were trapped at ground level. A leader in that same moment rises. They feel the anger. They acknowledge it, but they don't live inside of it. They step back mentally, gain altitude, and ask, what's actually happening here? What does this anger reveal? What decision serves me beyond this moment? Elevation transforms chaos into information. This is not emotional suppression. This is cognitive strategy. When you think from elevation, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. You become an architect of your response. You see more. You understand more. You choose better. The people who seem unshakable aren't built differently. They've simply trained their minds to rise when everyone else stays grounded. Here's what elevation gives you: perspective. You see the situation as part of a larger pattern, not as an isolated crisis. That meeting that feels catastrophic right now? From elevation, it's one data point in a longer journey. Options. At ground level, you see one path, usually the emotional one. From elevation, you see multiple routes, multiple strategies, multiple futures. Calm. Elevation creates distance between stimulus and response. That distance is where calm lives, not as a feeling, but as a function of perspective. Power. When you see more than others, you have an advantage they don't. Information asymmetry is power. Clarity is power. But elevation is a practice, not a trait. You have to train your mind to rise. And it starts with awareness. The next time you feel pulled into chaos, whether it's conflict, stress, urgency, or overwhelm, pause. Notice where your mind is. Are you on the ground, swept up in the immediacy of it all? Or are you rising above, watching it unfold? Ask yourself, what would this look like from higher ground? That question alone changes everything. Leaders don't experience less chaos. They experience it from a different altitude. And when you think from elevation, you realize something profound. Most of what feels urgent isn't. Most of what feels complex is actually simple patterns repeating. Most of what feels overwhelming is just noise. Elevation burns away the noise. What remains is clarity, and clarity is the first weapon of leadership. The mind that rises above its circumstances can never be controlled by them. Start building your watchtower today, now, with the very next thought that threatens to drag you under. Rise, look down, see clearly. That's where leadership begins. Chapter 2. The calm core. Calm is not a personality trait. It's a cognitive operating system. Most people misunderstand calm. They think it's about being relaxed, about not caring, about meditating on mountaintops or sipping tea while the world burns. That's not calm. That's avoidance. Real calm, leader's calm, is something entirely different. It's the mental state where clarity emerges, where decisions sharpen, where noise dies and signal remains. Think of your mind as a pool of water when it's agitated. Ripples, waves, turbulence. You can't see the bottom. You can't see what's actually there. Everything is distorted. unclear, reactive. But when the water settles, when it becomes perfectly still, you see everything. The shapes, the depth, the truth beneath the surface. That stillness is calm, and it's the most powerful competitive advantage a leader can have. Calm is not the absence of chaos, it's the presence of clarity within it. Here's what most people do. They let their environment dictate their internal state. If the world is chaotic, their mind becomes chaotic. If people are panicking, they panic. If pressure rises, their thoughts fragment. They've outsourced their mental state to external conditions. Leaders don't do that. They've built what I call the calm core, an internal center that remains stable regardless of external turbulence. Imagine two people in the same crisis, same information, same stakes, same pressure. One is drowning in it. Their thoughts are racing. Their emotions are spiking. Their decisions are impulsive. They're reactive, scattered, overwhelmed. The other is calm. Not because they care less, not because they're unaffected, but because they've trained their mind to remain operationally stable under pressure. That's the difference between someone who survives chaos and someone who leads through it. Calm is cognitive efficiency. When your mind is agitated, it burns energy on emotional processing instead of analytical thinking. It generates noise instead of solutions. It creates reaction loops instead of strategic responses. But when you operate from calm, your mind becomes exponentially more powerful. You process information faster. You see patterns others miss. You make decisions with precision instead of panic. Think about the best decision you ever made. I guarantee you weren't panicking when you made it. You were calm, clear, centered. Now think about your worst decision. I guarantee there was chaos in your mind, noise, urgency, emotional turbulence. The pattern is undeniable. Calm minds make better decisions. But here's the trap most people fall into. They wait for calm to arrive. They hope the situation will calm down so they can think clearly. Leaders don't wait. They create calm, internally, on demand, in the middle of the storm. You cannot control the chaos around you, but you can control the stability within you. So how do you build the calm core? First, you stop treating emotions as truth. Emotions are data. They're signals. They're useful, but they're not reality. When you feel panic, that doesn't mean the situation is hopeless. It means your nervous system is activated. When you feel anger, that doesn't mean someone wronged you. It means something violated your expectations. Leaders observe emotions. They don't inhabit them. Second, you create internal distance, not emotional detachment, cognitive space, the ability to think about your thinking, to watch your mind from a slight remove. When you're angry, instead of being the anger, you notice, I'm experiencing anger right now. That small shift, from identification to observation, creates calm. Third, you slow down your internal clock. Most people move at the speed of their anxiety. Their thoughts race, their actions rush, their decisions are reactive. Calm leaders move at the speed of clarity. They take the time to see fully before responding. They understand that a few seconds of stillness creates better outcomes than hours of frantic action. Pressure reveals the structure of your mind. If your mind is built on reactive patterns, pressure will shatter it. If your mind is built on the calm core, pressure will only prove how solid you are. There's a reason hostage negotiators speak slowly. Fighter pilots follow protocols. Surgeons move deliberately. They operate in high-pressure environments where panic would be fatal. So they've built calm into their operating system, not as a feeling, but as a discipline. You need to do the same. The next time you feel pressure rising, don't try to fight it. Don't try to relax. Instead, find your core. Drop your awareness into your center, your chest, your breath, not to meditate, but to stabilize. Ask yourself, what would calm look like right now? Not avoiding the problem, not pretending it doesn't matter, but approaching it with internal stability instead of chaos. That question rewires your response pattern. Most people escalate with their environment. Leaders stabilize despite it. And over time, this becomes automatic. Your mind learns that calm is an option, that stability is available, that you can face anything without fragmenting internally. That's when leadership stops being a performance and becomes your nature. Calm is the foundation upon which all great decisions are built. Build your calm core. Not someday. Now. In the next moment of pressure that finds you. Because the world doesn't need more reactive people. It needs leaders who can remain clear when everyone else is losing their minds. And that begins with the stillness you create within yourself. Chapter 3. Mental models that create strength. Your mind thinks in patterns. Always has. Always will. The question isn't whether you use mental models. The question is whether you're aware of which ones you're using and whether they serve you. Most people operate on default models, patterns they absorbed without choosing them, from family, from culture, from random experiences that happened to stick. These default models are invisible until you examine them. But they shape everything. How you interpret events, how you respond to challenges, what you believe is possible. Leaders are different. They don't accept default thinking. They deliberately install mental models designed to create clarity, power, and strategic advantage. And once you understand these frameworks, your entire relationship with reality transforms. Let me show you. Weak thinking creates weak outcomes. Precise models create precision in life. First, principles. Thinking. Most people think by analogy. They look at what already exists and try to replicate it with minor variations. They ask, how does everyone else do this? Leaders ask, what's actually true here? First principles thinking means breaking problems down to fundamental truths and reasoning up from there. Not copying. Not assuming. Building from bedrock. Imagine you want to start a business. Default thinking says, look at successful businesses in my industry and copy their model. First principles. Thinking says, what do customers actually need? What are the core economics? What assumptions am I making that might be wrong? The first approach keeps you inside existing patterns. The second rebuilds from truth. When you think in first principles, you stop being limited by what already exists. You see possibilities others miss because they're trapped in conventional wisdom. Elon Musk didn't ask, "How can I make rockets cheaper?" He asked, "What is a rocket made of? And what do those materials actually cost?" That question revealed that rockets could cost 2% of their market price if built correctly. That's first principles. That's leadership thinking. Inversion. Most people only think forward. They ask, "How do I succeed?" Leaders also think backward. They ask, "How could I fail spectacularly?" And then they avoid those paths. Inversion is the mental model of reverse engineering problems. Instead of only pursuing what you want, you identify what would destroy you and eliminate it. Charlie Munger, one of the greatest investors alive, famously said, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I never go there." That's inversion. And it's devastatingly effective. If you want a strong relationship, don't just ask what makes relationships work. Ask, what kills relationships? Lack of communication, resentment, taking each other for granted. Now avoid those patterns systematically. Inversion reveals risks that forward thinking misses. It protects you before problems emerge. The leader who can see failure before it arrives will never experience it. Delayed evaluation. Most people judge instantly. Something happens, and their mind immediately labels it. Good or bad, fair or unfair, win or loss. Leaders delay evaluation. They hold information without collapsing it into judgment too quickly. Here's why this matters. Reality is layered. What looks like a setback today might be the setup for a breakthrough tomorrow. What seems like victory now might reveal itself as a trap later. When you evaluate too quickly, you lose the ability to see these deeper patterns. The Stoics had a practice. When something appeared negative, they wouldn't call it bad. They'd say, "This happened. Just that. Nothing more." Not denial, just suspended judgment until they understood the full picture. This gives you cognitive flexibility. You don't lock yourself into interpretations prematurely. You remain open to information that might shift your understanding. Imagine you lose a major opportunity. Default thinking, "This is terrible. I failed." Delayed evaluation. "This happened. Let me see what this reveals." Maybe it shows you weren't ready. Maybe it redirects you to something better. Maybe it's teaching you something crucial. You don't know yet. So don't decide yet. Zooming in and zooming out. Leaders have mental toggle switches. They can zoom into details with microscopic focus, then zoom out to see the big picture, and they know when to use each. Most people get stuck at one altitude. They either obsess over details and miss the strategy, or they stay so high level they can't execute. Great thinking requires both. When you're making a decision, zoom out. How does this fit into the larger direction of my life? What does this look like a year from now? When you're executing, zoom in. What exactly needs to happen next? What specific action moves this forward? The ability to shift perspective on demand is a superpower. Steve Jobs was famous for this. He'd obsess over the corner radius of an iPhone icon, then zoom out to talk about how technology should serve humanity. Both. Fluidly. Intentionally. That's the zoom toggle. And you can train it. Detachment from immediate emotion. This is not emotional suppression. This is strategic distance. When something triggers you, anger, fear, excitement, disappointment, your immediate emotional response is often not the wisest response. Leaders recognize this. They don't act from the peak of emotion. They observe the emotion, acknowledge it, and then step back mentally before deciding how to respond. Think of emotion as weather. It passes through you. Sometimes it's useful data. Fear can signal danger. Anger can reveal violated boundaries. But you don't let the weather dictate your entire strategy. You wait for the storm to pass. Then you see clearly. Then you act. Emotions inform. Clarity decides. Clarity. Before action. Most people act to feel productive. They do something, anything, because motion feels like progress. Leaders pause until clarity emerges. They understand that action without clear thinking is just expensive chaos. Before any major move, they ask, what am I actually trying to achieve? What's the simplest path? What assumptions am I making? They don't act to relieve anxiety. They act because the path is clear. This takes discipline, because clarity sometimes requires sitting with uncertainty longer than feels comfortable. But that patience prevents wasted effort, false starts, and catastrophic mistakes. These models aren't tricks. They're not hacks. They're cognitive frameworks that rewire how you process reality. When you think in first principles, you build from truth. When you use inversion, you avoid disaster. When you delay evaluation, you see deeper. When you zoom, you gain perspective. When you detach from emotion, you choose wisely. When you demand clarity before action, you move with precision. Install these models. Practice them. Make them automatic, because the strength of your leadership will always match the strength of your thinking. And strong thinking begins with choosing the right frameworks. Your mind is a tool. These models are how you sharpen it. Chapter 4. Thinking in Systems. There's a scene I want you to imagine. A CEO walks into a meeting. The sales team reports declining numbers. Panic in the room. Everyone's proposing solutions. Better ads, more salespeople, discounts. The CEO listens, then asks one question. What changed upstream? Everyone goes quiet. They were so focused on sales, the symptom, they never thought about the system producing the result. Turns out, product quality declined 3 months ago. Customer support got overwhelmed. Word of mouth turned negative. And now, sales are falling. The solution isn't more ads. It's fixing what broke upstream that CEO thinks in systems. And that's a completely different level of intelligence. Most people think in events. Something happens, they react. Another thing happens, they react again. Their entire mental model is stimulus response, linear, isolated, reactive. Leaders think in systems. They see how things connect, how actions create consequences that ripple forward, how today's decision shapes tomorrow's reality. The leader who sees the whole machine will never be confused by a single gear. Systems thinking is the recognition that everything is connected, that problems don't exist in isolation, that pulling one lever affects 3 others you didn't notice. And once you start thinking this way, you become almost impossible to destabilize because you're seeing patterns others miss. Let me explain how this works. Imagine you're tired all the time. Most people treat this as an isolated problem. They try to fix it directly. More coffee, better sleep schedule, vitamins A. Systems thinker asks, what's the system producing this fatigue? Maybe it's diet affecting energy. Maybe it's stress affecting sleep quality. Maybe it's lack of purpose affecting motivation. Maybe it's all 3, feeding into each other in a loop. Suddenly, it's not one problem. It's a system. And systems require systemic solutions. You don't just fix the symptom. You redesign the structure creating it. This is how leaders operate at a level others don't understand. When everyone else is fighting fires, they're examining why fires keep starting. When everyone else is treating symptoms, they're redesigning the underlying system. Feedback loops. Every system has feedback loops, cycles where outputs become inputs, creating either virtuous circles or vicious spirals. Imagine you start exercising. You feel better. That good feeling motivates more exercise. More exercise creates better health. Better health improves mood. Improved mood creates discipline. Discipline reinforces exercise. That's a virtuous cycle. The system reinforces positive outcomes. Now imagine the opposite. You skip the gym once. You feel guilty. Guilt lowers motivation. Low motivation leads to skipping again. More skips create shame. Shame destroys discipline. Lack of discipline becomes identity. That's a vicious spiral. The system reinforces negative outcomes. Leaders recognize these loops. They intentionally create virtuous cycles and break vicious ones. If you're stuck in a negative pattern, don't just fight the behavior. Interrupt the loop. Change one variable that feeds the cycle. That's systemic thinking. Lag time. Most people expect immediate results. They make a change and want instant feedback. When it doesn't come, they assume the change didn't work. Systems thinkers understand lag time. You plant a seed. You don't get a tree tomorrow. There's a delay between cause and effect. And that delay confuses people who think linearly. Leaders are patient with lag time. They make the right decision and trust the system to deliver results, even if it takes months. This is why great leaders can make unpopular decisions that prove brilliant years later. They're thinking systemically, accounting for lag time, while everyone else wants immediate gratification. You hire slowly. Fire fast. The system improves over time. You invest in culture, and productivity rises months later. You build out quality, and reputation compounds over years. Impatient minds create fragile systems. Patient minds build empires. Leverage points. Not all actions are equal. In any system, there are leverage points, places where a small change creates disproportionate results. Leaders hunt for these. Most people apply equal effort everywhere. Leaders apply targeted effort where it matters most. Imagine a business. You could work harder on marketing, sales, operations, and product. Or you could find the constraint, the one bottleneck limiting everything else, and fix that first. That's leverage. That's systemic intelligence. In your own life, there's probably one or two changes that would cascade into everything else. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's who you spend time with. Maybe it's a single habit that would shift your entire trajectory. Find the leverage point. Apply pressure there. Watch the system transform. Unintended consequences. Every action creates ripples. Some you plan for. Others you don't. Linear thinkers only see first-order effects. They do X. They expect Y. They never look further. Systems thinkers ask, then what? And then what after that? A company fires 20% of its workforce to cut costs. First-order effect, immediate savings. Second-order effect, remaining employees are terrified. Morale collapses, productivity drops. Third-order effect, your best people leave, quality declines, customers notice. You solved the wrong problem and created 3 bigger ones. Leaders trace consequences several moves ahead. They think like chess players, not checkers players. They see how this decision affects that relationship, which affects that opportunity, which changes the entire game. This doesn't mean paralysis. It means precision, interconnection. The most powerful realization of systems thinking is this: nothing exists in isolation. Your health affects your decisions. Your decisions affect your relationships. Your relationships affect your opportunities. Your opportunities affect your growth. It's all connected. And when you see the connections, you stop treating life like a series of separate problems. You start designing your entire system. What's the lifestyle that would support the career you want? What are the relationships that would elevate your thinking? What are the habits that would compound into the person you're becoming? Systems thinking turns you into an architect of your own life. Instead of reacting to each problem individually, you design structures that prevent problems from arising. Instead of fighting the same battles repeatedly, you change the terrain. That's the difference between someone managing their life and someone leading it. When you think in systems, you stop being surprised by outcomes. You see them coming. You trace the patterns. You understand cause and effect across time. And that understanding gives you a level of control that looks like magic to everyone else. The mind that sees connections becomes impossible to destabilize. Start looking for systems in your work, in your relationships, in your own patterns. Ask, what's really producing this result? What's the structure beneath the surface? What's connected to what? And when you see the system clearly, you'll know exactly where to intervene. That's the thinking that builds empires. That solves impossible problems. That makes you the person others turn to when nothing makes sense. Because while they're drowning in chaos, you're seeing the elegant structure beneath it all. And seeing clearly is the first step to leading powerfully. Chapter 5: Strategic Detachment. There's a moment in every crisis where something shifts, not in the situation, in you. You're drowning in it. The urgency, the emotion, the chaos pressing in from every side. It feels like the walls are closing, like you have to act now, like everything depends on this moment. And then something changes. You step back internally, not physically, not emotionally, mentally. And suddenly, you're not inside the problem anymore. You're observing it. That's strategic detachment. And it's one of the most powerful cognitive tools a leader can develop. You cannot solve a problem from inside of it. Let me be clear. This is not emotional disconnection. This is not shutting down. This is not pretending you don't care. Strategic detachment is the ability to care deeply while thinking clearly, to be invested in the outcome without being imprisoned by the moment. It's the difference between drowning and swimming. Same water, different relationship to it. Think about the last time you were completely overwhelmed. Maybe a conflict, maybe a failure, maybe devastating news. In that moment, you were trapped inside the experience. Your thoughts were the problem. Your emotions were the problem. You couldn't think your way out because you were thinking from inside of it. Now imagine if, in that same moment, part of you could rise above, not to escape, but to see, to observe yourself in the chaos, to watch your mind reacting, to recognize the patterns playing out. That observing part, that's your strategic mind. And the more you develop it, the more powerful you become. The battlefield metaphor. Imagine a general in the middle of a losing battle, soldiers dying, lines collapsing, enemy advancing. If that general is inside the emotion, the panic, the grief, the fear, he's useless. He'll make reactive decisions, emotional decisions, fatal decisions. But if he can step back, even while feeling everything, and see the battlefield objectively, he might spot an opening, a weakness in the enemy's formation, a chance to turn the tide. Strategic detachment doesn't eliminate emotion. It prevents emotion from eliminating strategy. You feel everything. You care completely. But you don't let the intensity of the moment collapse your ability to see clearly. This is what separates leaders from victims. Victims are swept up in their circumstances. Leaders stand beside their circumstances, feeling them fully while thinking clearly about them. The observer, self, inside you. There are two voices. One is experiencing. It's feeling the anger, the fear, the excitement, the disappointment. It's inside the movie, reacting to every scene. The other is observing. It's watching you experience. It's noticing the patterns. It's calm, even when the experiencing self is chaos. Most people never develop the observer. They live entirely inside the experiencing self, at the mercy of whatever emotion arises. Leaders train the observer. They practice watching their own mind, not judging it, not fighting it, just observing. I'm feeling angry right now, not I am angry. Because you're not the anger, you're the awareness, noticing the anger. That distinction changes everything. When you can observe your emotions, you're no longer controlled by them. When you can watch your thoughts without becoming them, you gain freedom. This is strategic detachment. Presence without imprisonment. Step back to see the whole battlefield. When you're inside a problem, your perspective is limited. You see what's directly in front of you. You feel the pressure of immediacy. Everything seems urgent. But urgency is often an illusion. When you detach strategically, you gain perspective. You see the problem as part of a larger context. You recognize patterns you missed before. You spot options that were invisible from inside the chaos. Let's say someone criticizes you publicly. In the moment, you feel it personally. It stings. You want to defend yourself immediately. That's ground-level thinking. Strategic detachment asks, what's actually happening here? Is this about me or about them? Is this one moment, or is there a pattern? What would a response from clarity look like versus a response from ego? Suddenly, you're not reacting. You're choosing. And the quality of your choice will be infinitely better because you're seeing the situation clearly instead of drowning in it. Detachment is not distance. Here's what strategic detachment is not. It's not coldness. It's not shutting down emotionally. It's not pretending you don't care. It's not disconnecting from people or becoming robotic. Those are all forms of avoidance. Strategic detachment is engagement from a position of clarity. You care completely. You feel deeply. But you don't let intensity collapse your intelligence. Think of it like this. A surgeon cares about their patient deeply. But if they break down emotionally during surgery, they can't help. They need to care and think clearly simultaneously. That's the balance, emotional investment plus cognitive distance. Training detachment. You can't develop this by thinking about it. You develop it by practicing in real situations. The next time something triggers you, anger, anxiety, disappointment, try this. Pause. Just for 3 seconds. Notice what you're feeling. Name it. I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling panicked. I'm feeling rejected. That act of naming creates distance. You're no longer the emotion. You're the one observing it. Then ask, what does this situation look like from outside of me? If I were advising someone else facing this, what would I say? That question activates your strategic mind. It pulls you out of the subjective trap and into objective clarity. Over time, this becomes automatic. You'll still feel everything, but you won't be imprisoned by it. You'll operate with the dual consciousness of leaders, present and detached simultaneously. The power of pause. Strategic detachment requires one thing above all: the willingness to pause. Most people react instantly. Something happens, and they respond within seconds. No space, no reflection, just stimulus and response. Leaders insert space between stimulus and response. That space is where strategy lives. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space is strategic detachment. It's the moment where you step back, where you observe instead of react, where you reclaim your agency. And in that space, you transform from someone who is acted upon to someone who acts with intention. Detachment is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of choice within it. This is not easy, especially in the beginning. Your default patterns want to drag you back into reactivity. Your emotions want immediate expression. Your ego wants instant defense. But leadership is built in the space between impulse and action. Every time you pause, every time you observe instead of react, every time you choose strategy over emotion, you're building the mental muscle that separates great leaders from everyone else. You're training yourself to see the battlefield even while you're standing on it. And when you can do that, you become almost impossible to destabilize. Because while everyone else is swept up in the chaos of the moment, you're standing beside it, seeing clearly, choosing wisely, acting strategically. That's the power of detachment. That's the clarity of leadership. That's the mind that wins. Chapter 6. Precision. Thinking. Vague thoughts build vague lives. Most people live in a fog of imprecise thinking. They use words like maybe, sort of, I guess, hopefully. They make plans that sound like wishes. They set goals that feel like daydreams. And then they wonder why nothing crystallizes into reality. Leaders think with precision. And that precision shapes everything. Your thoughts are not passive. They're the architecture of your decisions, the blueprint of your actions, the foundation of every outcome you create. Imprecise thinking creates imprecise results. Precise thinking creates precision in life. Clarity of thought becomes clarity of action, becomes clarity of outcome. Think about the last time you felt confused about what to do. I guarantee the confusion wasn't really about the situation. It was about your thinking. You weren't asking clear questions. You weren't defining terms precisely. You weren't separating what you knew from what you assumed. Your thinking was muddled. So naturally, your path forward felt muddled too. Now contrast that with a moment when you knew exactly what to do. No hesitation, no second guessing, just clear action. I guarantee your thinking in that moment was precise. You knew what you wanted. You understood the situation. You saw the path. That's not accident. That's cause and effect. Precise thinking creates decisive action. Always. Define your terms. Most people use words without defining them. They say, I want to be successful, without ever clarifying what success actually means to them. Is it money, freedom, impact, recognition, peace? Without definition, the word is empty, and empty words create empty pursuits. Leaders define their terms. They don't operate on vague concepts. They get specific. Not, I want to be successful, but success for me means building a business that generates enough income to support my family while giving me flexibility to spend afternoons with my children. See the difference? One is fog. The other is crystal clear. And when your thinking is clear, your decisions become obvious. You're offered a high-paying job that requires 80-hour weeks. If your definition of success is vague, you might take it, hoping it leads to success. But if your definition is precise, freedom plus family time, you immediately know this opportunity doesn't serve you. Precision eliminates confusion. Every concept you use regularly should be defined. What does leadership mean to you? What does integrity mean? What does a good life look like? Write it down. Make it specific. Turn abstract concepts into concrete definitions, because vague words allow vague thinking, and vague thinking creates a vague existence. Separate fact from interpretation. Most people blend fact and interpretation into one muddy narrative. Someone doesn't text back, and they think, they're ignoring me. They don't care. But that's not what happened. What happened is they didn't text back. That's the fact. They're ignoring me is interpretation. They don't care is interpretation. And when you treat interpretation as fact, you build entire belief systems on top of assumptions. Leaders practice separating the two. They ask, what actually happened? Versus, what story am I telling myself about what happened? This distinction is everything. Your colleague didn't greet you this morning. Fact. They walked past without saying hello. Interpretation. They're angry at me. They're disrespectful. They don't value our relationship. But maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they're dealing with a crisis. Maybe they're lost in thought. You don't know. So don't pretend you do. Precise thinking means acknowledging what you know and what you're assuming, and then making decisions based on facts, not the stories you've layered on top of them. Facts inform, interpretations distort. Ask better questions. Vague questions produce vague answers. Why doesn't anything work out for me? Is a vague question. It presupposes failure. It implies powerlessness. It produces whining, not insight. A precise question would be, what specific pattern in my decision-making consistently produces outcomes I don't want? See how that shifts everything? The first question leads to self-pity. The second leads to analysis and improvement. Leaders are obsessive about question quality. They know that the quality of your questions determines the quality of your thinking. Not, why am I stuck? But what's the one obstacle that, if removed, would create the most momentum? Not, why don't people respect me? But what behaviors am I demonstrating that might communicate a lack of self-respect? Not, how do I make more money? But what value am I not creating that the market would pay for? Better questions unlock better thinking, and better thinking creates better outcomes. Train yourself to catch vague questions and rephrase them with precision. Eliminate weasel words. Weasel words are the language of imprecise thinking. They create plausible deniability for your own lack of commitment. Words like maybe, hopefully, try, sort of, kind of, possibly, I'll see, we'll figure it out. These words signal uncertainty, and uncertainty in your language reflects uncertainty in your thinking. Leaders commit with their language because they've committed with their thinking. Not, I'll try to finish this by Friday, but I'll finish this by Friday. Not, maybe I'll start exercising, but I'm exercising Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. Not, hopefully things will improve, but I'm implementing X, Y, and Z to create improvement. The precision of your language reveals the precision of your thought. When you eliminate weasel words, you force yourself to think clearly. You either commit or you don't. You either know or you don't. You either will or you won't. That clarity is uncomfortable at first, because it removes the fog you've been hiding behind. But that discomfort is growth. That's you becoming someone who thinks with precision and acts with certainty. Quantify when possible. Vague, I want to get in shape. Precise, I want to lose 15 pounds and be able to run a 5K in under 30 minutes within 90 days. The first is a wish. The second is a target. Numbers force precision. They eliminate ambiguity. They make progress measurable. Not, I need to work harder, but I'm going to add 10 focused hours per week to project development. Not, I want better relationships, but I'm going to have one deep conversation per week with someone who matters to me. Quantification transforms abstract desires into concrete plans. And concrete plans get executed. Abstract desires just get discussed. Be ruthlessly specific. Most people describe their goals, their problems, and their plans in generalities. I want to grow my business. Okay. By how much? In what time frame? Through which specific mechanism? I'm feeling stressed. About what specifically? What are the 3 main sources? What's within your control? I need to improve my leadership. In which specific area? Communication, decision-making, strategic thinking. With which specific people or in which situations? The more specific your thinking, the more actionable your path becomes. Vague problems have no solutions. Specific problems have specific solutions. Leaders dissect their challenges into precise components. They don't say, "This isn't working." They say, "Our customer acquisition cost is too high relative to lifetime value because our targeting is too broad and our messaging isn't differentiated enough." One is complaining. The other is diagnosing. And diagnosis leads to treatment. Precision as practice. This isn't about being pedantic. This isn't about overcomplicating simple things. This is about training your mind to operate with clarity instead of fog. And it starts today, right now, with the very next thought you have. When you catch yourself thinking vaguely, I should probably stop. Rephrase with precision. I will do X at Y time to achieve Z outcome. When you're about to say maybe, stop. Decide. Yes or no. Commit or decline. Remove the middle ground. When you're describing a problem in generalities, stop. Get specific. Name the exact issue. Identify the precise obstacle. This is mental discipline. And discipline in thinking creates power in life. Because while everyone else is wandering through fog, hoping to stumble upon success, you're moving with clarity, precision, and intention. You know what you want. You know what stands in your way. You know what you're going to do about it. That's the difference between someone who dreams and someone who builds. Precision is power. Clarity is command. Tighten your thinking. Define your terms. Sharpen your questions. Eliminate the vague. and watch how your entire reality responds to the clarity you've created. Chapter 7. Decision Crafting. Every leader is defined by their decisions, not by their intentions, not by their potential, not by their words, by their decisions. And here's what most people don't understand. Decisions aren't just choices. They're acts of creation. Every decision you make is crafting your future, shaping your identity, building the life you'll inhabit tomorrow. Most people treat decisions like reactions. Something happens, they choose, they move on random, impulsive, inconsistent. Leaders treat decisions like architecture, deliberate, strategic, aligned. You are the sum of your decisions. Nothing more, nothing less. Think about where you are right now. Your relationships, your career, your financial situation, your health, your state of mind. Every single element of your current reality was created by a decision. Maybe a decision you made consciously, maybe one you made on autopilot, but a decision nonetheless. Which means, if you want a different reality, you need different decisions, not better luck, not better circumstances, better decisions. And better decisions come from better decision-making frameworks. Eliminate, don't accumulate. Most people make decisions by addition. They look at their options and ask, what should I add to my life? Leaders make decisions by subtraction. They ask, what should I eliminate? Because the clearest path forward often comes from removing what doesn't serve you, not adding more complexity. You're overwhelmed with opportunities. Default thinking says, which one should I pursue? Leader thinking says, which of these align with my core direction? Everything else gets eliminated. You have 10 projects competing for attention. Default thinking tries to balance all 10. Leader thinking cuts 7, focuses on 3, and dominates those Warren Buffett's advice. Write down your top 25 goals. Circle the top 5. Now avoid the other 20 like the plague, because they're distractions disguised as opportunities. That's elimination thinking, and it's liberating. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something essential. Leaders protect their focus by saying no to everything that doesn't clearly serve their direction. Decision-making becomes exponentially easier when you eliminate options ruthlessly. Direction over perfection. Most people delay decisions because they're waiting for certainty, for perfect information, for guaranteed outcomes. Leaders understand you'll never have complete information. Certainty is a myth. Perfection is a trap. What matters is direction. Is this decision moving you toward your vision or away from it? That's the only question that matters. Not, is this perfect? But, is this directionally correct? Imagine you're in a forest at night. You can't see the full path. You don't know every obstacle ahead. But you know north is your direction. You don't need to see the entire journey. You need to take the next step north, then the next, then the next. That's directional decision-making. You don't choose based on guarantees. You choose based on alignment with where you're going. This removes the paralysis of perfectionism. You're not trying to make the right decision. You're making the decision that points you in the right direction. And you can always course correct as you move. Imperfect action in the right direction beats perfect planning in circles. Choose based on values, not feelings. Feelings are temporary. Values are permanent. Most people make decisions based on what they feel in the moment. They choose comfort over growth, pleasure over progress, ease over excellence. And then they wonder why their lives don't reflect their aspirations. Leaders anchor decisions to values, not emotions. You value health, but you feel like staying in bed. Your value wins. You get up. You value integrity, but you feel like cutting corners. Your value wins. You do it right. You value growth, but you feel like staying comfortable. Your value wins. You step into discomfort. This is how you build a life that actually reflects what matters to you. When you make decisions from feelings, you're inconsistent. Your life becomes a reaction to your moods. When you make decisions from values, you're consistent. Your life becomes an expression of your principles, and consistency compounds into identity. Reduce emotional interference. Emotions aren't bad, but they're terrible decision makers. Fear makes you conservative. Anger makes you reckless. Excitement makes you impulsive. Desperation makes you short-sighted. Leaders, recognize emotional states and adjust for them. When you're emotional, particularly in extremes, delay major decisions if possible. Wait for the intensity to pass. Then decide from clarity. If you can't delay, acknowledge the emotion and compensate for it. I'm feeling desperate right now, which makes me likely to accept the first option available. Given that, what would I choose if I were calm? That question neutralizes the emotional distortion. You're angry at someone. Your emotion wants to send a scorching message. Your clarity knows that will burn a bridge you might need. Acknowledge the anger. Feel it. But don't decide from it. Wait. Detach. Then choose the response your future self will respect. The 10-10-10 framework. When facing a difficult decision, ask yourself, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? In 10 months? In 10 years? Often, what feels urgent in 10 minutes becomes irrelevant in 10 years, and what feels uncomfortable in 10 minutes becomes the foundation of pride in 10 years. This framework helps you separate immediate emotional reactions from long-term strategic value. Eating the cake feels great in 10 minutes, feels regrettable in 10 months, invisible in 10 years. Having the difficult conversation feels terrible in 10 minutes, feels necessary in 10 months, feels defining in 10 years. The 10-10-10 framework elevates your perspective. It pulls you out of the immediate and into the meaningful. Leaders consistently choose the decision their future self will thank them for, even when their current self resists. Decide. Then commit. Most people make half decisions. They choose something, but they don't commit to it. They keep one foot in, one foot out, ready to retreat at the first sign of difficulty. That's not a decision. That's a tentative experiment. Real decisions are one-way doors. You step through, and you burn the bridge behind you. Not recklessly, but definitively. When you decide, fully decide. Commit your resources. Commit your attention. Commit your identity. I'm doing this, not I'll try this. Because half commitment produces half results, and half results reinforce the belief that your decisions don't work. They don't work because you didn't fully make them. Leaders decide with finality, and that finality creates momentum. It eliminates the psychological escape hatch. It forces you to make it work. And when you're committed to making it work, you usually do. Accept the cost. Every decision has a cost. Every choice requires sacrifice. Choose career advancement. Sacrifice time with family. Choose family time. Sacrifice career velocity. Choose depth. Sacrifice breadth. Choose breadth. Sacrifice depth. There's no escape from trade-offs. The question is which costs you're willing to pay. Leaders don't delude themselves. They clearly see the cost of each option and consciously choose which price they'll pay. Most people want benefits without costs. They want success without sacrifice. They want transformation without change. That's fantasy. Growth costs comfort. Excellence costs mediocrity. Freedom costs security. Name the cost. Accept it. Pay it willingly. Because when you pay the price consciously, it's an investment. When you pretend there's no price, it becomes a surprise tax that bankrupts you. Decide who you're becoming. The most important decisions aren't about what to do. They're about who to be. Every action is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. You can't make one decision and expect it to change your life. But you can make one decision and let it define your identity. I'm the type of person who follows through. I'm the type of person who does hard things. I'm the type of person who keeps their word. When you make a decision from identity, it's not willpower. It's automatic. You don't decide whether to exercise today. You exercise because you're the type of person who takes care of their body. You don't decide whether to keep your promise. You keep it because you're the type of person who honors their word. Identity-based decisions create consistency, and consistency creates transformation. Every decision is a vote for who you're becoming. Choose wisely. Your life right now is a perfect reflection of your historical decision patterns. If you want a different life, make different decisions, not occasionally, systematically, starting now. With the next choice in front of you, choose with clarity. Choose with courage. Choose aligned with who you're becoming. Because leaders aren't born. They're crafted. One decision at a time. Chapter 8. Leading under pressure. Pressure reveals everything. It reveals who built their leadership on performance and who built it on substance, who thinks clearly and who collapses into chaos, who prepared their mind and who hoped circumstances would stay comfortable. The truth is this: anyone can lead when things are easy, when resources are abundant, when everyone agrees, when the path is clear. Real leadership is tested under pressure, and pressure is where most people fail. Not because they lack skill, but because they never trained their mind to operate when everything is falling apart. Pressure doesn't build character. It reveals the structure you've already built. Think about the last time you were under extreme pressure. Maybe a crisis at work. Maybe a personal emergency. Maybe a situation where everything was on the line. How did you think in that moment? Were you clear or chaotic? Calm or panicked? Strategic or reactive? Whatever showed up in that moment, that's the real structure of your mind, not the version of you that exists in comfort, the version that exists in crisis. And here's what matters. You can train for that moment. You can build a mind that operates with clarity when everyone else is losing theirs. That's what this chapter is about. The cognitive load problem. When pressure hits, your cognitive resources are under siege. Your brain is processing threat signals. Your emotions are spiking. Your body is flooding with stress hormones. Your attention is fragmenting across multiple urgent inputs. In that state, complex thinking becomes nearly impossible. Your IQ effectively drops. your decision-making deteriorates. You default to whatever patterns are most automatic. For most people, those patterns are reactive, emotional, and short-sighted. Leaders train different patterns. They train their minds to simplify under pressure, not complicate, to slow down internally even when everything external is accelerating, to focus on what matters instead of drowning in what's urgent. This isn't natural. It's built. Slow your internal clock. When pressure hits, most people speed up internally. Their thoughts race. Their speech accelerates. Their actions become frantic. They match the external chaos with internal chaos, and that's when mistakes multiply. Leaders do the opposite. They slow down internally, not physically. You still move with urgency, but your mind operates at a different speed than the situation. Think of it like this. The situation is moving at 100 miles per hour. Most people try to think at 100 miles per hour to keep up. But fast thinking under pressure is almost always bad thinking. Leaders slow their internal clock to 50 miles per hour. They deliberately create space between stimulus and response. They pause. They breathe. They think. And paradoxically, by slowing down internally, they move faster externally, because they're not wasting energy on unproductive reactions. The Navy SEALs have a saying, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." That's the principle. Slow your mind down. Let clarity emerge. Then execute smoothly. You save more time making the right decision slowly than making 3 wrong decisions quickly. Simplify to first principles. Under pressure, complexity is your enemy. Your mind can't hold 17 variables simultaneously while stress hormones are flooding your system. Trying to do so guarantees paralysis or poor choices. Leaders simplify ruthlessly. They cut through complexity and ask, what's actually essential here? What's the one thing that matters most? What's the simplest possible path through this situation? They reduce the problem to first principles. Not because they can't handle complexity, but because pressure isn't the time for it. Imagine your business is in crisis. Revenue is falling. Team is panicking. Investors are demanding answers. Your inbox is exploding with urgent problems. Default response. Try to address everything simultaneously. Answer every email. Calm every person. Fix every problem. That's a recipe for failure. Leader response. What's the one variable that, if stabilized, would give us the foundation to solve everything else? Maybe it's cash flow. Maybe it's client retention. Maybe it's team morale. Find that one thing. Focus entirely on it. Everything else waits. In crisis, less is more. Simplicity saves. Emotional sovereignty. Pressure triggers emotions. That's not the problem. The problem is most people become their emotions under pressure. Fear makes them freeze. Anger makes them attack. Desperation makes them grasp. Overwhelm makes them shut down. Leaders maintain emotional sovereignty. They feel the emotions without becoming them. This goes back to strategic detachment. You acknowledge the fear. Yes, this is frightening. But you don't let fear decide your strategy. You acknowledge the anger. Yes, this is infuriating. But you don't let anger dictate your response. You maintain control of your decision-making, even while emotions surge. This doesn't mean suppression. Suppression is when you pretend you're not feeling something. Sovereignty is when you feel it fully, but don't surrender your leadership to it. The emotion is data. It's information. It's not the commander. You are the commander. And commanders make decisions based on strategy, not on how they feel in the heat of battle. Pre-decided protocols. Fighter pilots don't figure out what to do during an emergency. They execute protocols they've already trained. Engine failure at takeoff? There's a protocol fire in the cockpit? There's a protocol. Loss of cabin pressure? Protocol. They've pre-decided their response so they don't have to think clearly while panic is flooding their system. Leaders do the same. They think through high-pressure scenarios in advance and decide how they'll respond before the pressure hits. What will you do if your largest client leaves? What will you do if you get unexpected, terrible news? What will you do if someone attacks you publicly? What will you do if you face a sudden financial crisis? Don't wait for these situations to arrive. Decide now, in clarity, what your response framework will be. That way, when pressure hits, you're not making decisions in chaos. You're executing decisions you made in clarity. This is why militaries run drills, why hospitals do disaster simulations, why great leaders think through scenarios before they happen. The time to forge strategy is before the battle, not during it. Focus narrows. Everything. Under pressure, your attention becomes your most valuable resource. Most people let their attention fragment. They try to track everything, respond to everything, worry about everything. Leaders narrow focus to what actually moves the situation forward. There's a concept in crisis management: the vital few versus the trivial many. In any crisis, there are 3 to 5 actions that will actually resolve the situation. Everything else is noise. Find those 3 to 5 things. Ignore everything else temporarily. Not forever. But until the crisis is resolved, you can't save everything simultaneously. You can save what matters most first, then address the rest from stable ground. This requires brutal prioritization. It means letting some things fail while you save others. It means disappointing some people while you serve those who matter most. It's uncomfortable, but it's leadership. The anchor point. When everything is chaotic, you need something stable to orient around. For some leaders, it's their values. For others, it's their mission. For others, it's their vision of the other side of the crisis. Whatever it is, it's your anchor point. The thing that remains true when everything else is uncertain. When you're spinning in chaos, you return to your anchor. Why am I doing this? What actually matters here? What's the outcome I'm fighting for? That clarity recenters you. It cuts through the noise. It reminds you what you're building toward when all you can see is what's burning. Your anchor point is personal, but you need to define it before pressure arrives. Because when you're drowning, you don't have time to figure out what's worth swimming toward. Post-crisis analysis. After every high-pressure situation, leaders review their performance, not to beat themselves up, to learn. What did I do well under pressure? What patterns served me? What decisions am I proud of? What broke down? Where did I lose clarity? What would I do differently next time? This transforms every crisis into training, every pressure situation into an opportunity to strengthen your mental architecture. Most people just survive crises and hope the next one doesn't come. Leaders use crises to build themselves into someone who can handle bigger ones. Over time, your tolerance for pressure expands. What used to break you becomes manageable. What used to feel chaotic becomes familiar, not because you're avoiding pressure, but because you're systematically becoming someone who operates better within it. Pressure is the forge. Leaders willingly walk into the fire. You can't avoid pressure. If you're building anything meaningful, pressure will find you. The only question is, will it reveal cracks in your foundation, or will it prove the strength you've built? Build the structure now, in calm, in clarity, in preparation. So when the storm comes, and it will come, you'll be the one everyone turns to. Not because you're fearless, but because you're clear. Not because you're unaffected, but because you're unshakable. That's the leader the world needs. And that leader is built in moments like this, long before the pressure arrives. Chapter 9. The Vision. Mind. There's a room in your mind that most people never enter. It's the place where the future lives. Not as fantasy, not as hope, but as something real enough to touch, clear enough to follow, compelling enough to pursue when everything else tells you to quit. Leaders live in this room. They've trained themselves to see what doesn't exist yet and treat it as if it already does. This is the vision mind, and it's the most transformative cognitive capability you can develop. Most people are prisoners of the present. They see what is and assume that's all there can be. Their imagination is limited by current reality. Their decisions are constrained by existing patterns. Leaders think from the future backward. They see a reality that hasn't materialized yet. And then they work backward from that vision to figure out what needs to happen today. Vision isn't daydreaming. It's seeing the architecture of what's possible and building toward it systematically. Think about the last time you accomplished something meaningful. Before it existed, it was just a picture in your mind, an idea, a possibility. But somehow, that internal image had enough reality to it that you moved toward it day after day, decision after decision, until what was internal became external. That's the power of vision. It creates a gravitational pull toward a future that doesn't exist yet. And when you develop the vision mind, you stop being reactive to your circumstances. You become creative with them. The architecture of tomorrow. Most people think vision is about imagination. It's not. Imagination creates possibilities. Vision creates architecture. When you imagine something, you play with ideas. When you envision something, you build structure. The difference is precision. Vague vision. I want to be successful. Precise vision. Within 3 years, I will have built a company that generates sustainable revenue, employs people whose work gives them meaning, and creates products that solve real problems. I will operate with integrity, maintain calm under pressure, and build systems that don't require my constant presence. See the difference? The second vision has detail, specificity, structure. It's not a wish. It's a blueprint. And blueprints can be built. Leaders spend time in this architectural space. They don't just imagine success in general terms. They design it in specific ones. What does the life you're building actually look like? Not the highlights, the daily reality. What time do you wake up? What kind of work fills your days? Who are the people around you? What problems are you solving? What does your environment look like? How do you feel when you're living this life? The more precise your vision, the more your mind knows what to move toward. Vague targets create vague motivation. Precise targets create precision in action. The internal compass. Your vision isn't a destination. It's a direction. This is important because many people abandon their vision the moment the path changes. They had one specific picture, and when circumstances shift, they think the vision died. Leaders understand. The vision is the direction, not the destination. You're moving north. That's the vision. The specific path you take to get north will change constantly based on terrain, obstacles, opportunities. But north remains north. This is what allows leaders to be both committed and flexible simultaneously. They're absolutely committed to the direction, completely flexible about the route. Most people do the opposite. They're vague about direction and rigid about route. So they end up somewhere they never intended because they followed a path that felt comfortable rather than one that pointed toward their vision. Your vision is your internal compass. When you're confused, when decisions feel overwhelming, when opportunities multiply and you don't know which to choose, you return to the compass. You ask, which option points most directly toward my vision? That question eliminates 80% of your confusion instantly, because most opportunities aren't opportunities at all. They're distractions disguised as progress. The vision. Mind gives you the ability to distinguish between the two, seeing what others cannot. Here's what separates visionary leaders from everyone else. They see potential where others see nothing, not because they're delusional, because they've trained their minds to look past current reality and into underlying structure. Someone looks at a struggling business and sees failure. A visionary looks at the same business and sees distribution channels, customer relationships, operational infrastructure. They see the raw materials that could be reconfigured into something valuable. Someone looks at a difficult person and sees a problem. A visionary looks at the same person and sees unexpressed talent, unmet needs, potential, waiting for the right environment. This isn't optimism. This isn't positive thinking. This is the ability to see beneath surfaces, to recognize that current reality is temporary, that everything is in motion. That structure can be redesigned. Most people accept reality as fixed. Leaders see it as malleable. And that perceptual difference changes everything. When you develop the vision, mind, you stop asking, is this good or bad? You start asking, what could this become? One question keeps you trapped in present circumstances. The other opens infinite possibilities. The tension that drives you. Vision creates productive discomfort. When you can see where you're going, and you can see where you are, the gap between the two becomes impossible to ignore. That gap is tension. And most people try to eliminate it. They either lower their vision to match their current reality. I guess this is as good as it gets. Or they escape into fantasy and stop doing the real work. Leaders live in the tension. They use it as fuel. The gap between what is and what could be doesn't depress them. It energizes them. Every day, they wake up knowing there's work to do. Distance to close. Reality to transform. That tension creates urgency without panic. Direction without rigidity. Progress without desperation. This is why visionary leaders seem to have endless drive. They're not superhuman. They're simply pulled forward by something more real than their current circumstances. When your vision is clear enough, you don't need external motivation. The gap between here and there is motivation. Clear vision creates internal pressure that transforms into forward momentum. The practice of mental time travel. Here's a practice that builds the vision. Mind. Think from 5 years forward, not 5 years from now. 5 years forward. Imagine it's 5 years in the future. You've built what you set out to build. You're living the life you envisioned. The person you wanted to become is who you are now. From that future position, look back at today. Look back at this moment. What does your future self wish you had started today? What decisions does future you know were turning points? What habits made the difference? What courage did you need that you didn't know you had? This is reverse engineering your life. And it reveals paths that forward thinking misses. Most people ask, given where I am, what should I do? The vision. Mind asks, given where I want to be, what needs to be true now? That second question cuts through noise instantly. It reveals priorities. It exposes what matters and what doesn't. Practice this mental time travel regularly. Live in the future position. See your current life from there. Make decisions from there. This isn't fantasy. This is strategic cognition. So you're training your mind to think from the outcome backward, which is exactly how great strategies are formed. Vision as filter. When your vision is clear, it becomes the most powerful decision-making filter you have. Every opportunity, every relationship, every commitment passes through one question. Does this move me toward my vision or away from it? Not, is this a good opportunity? But, is this my opportunity? Not, is this person impressive? But, does this person align with where I'm going? Not, will this make money? But, does this build what I'm building? The vision. Mind creates ruthless clarity about what belongs in your life and what doesn't. Most people accumulate. They say yes to everything that looks appealing. They collect opportunities, relationships, projects, commitments, and then they wonder why they feel scattered, why nothing reaches completion, why they're busy but not progressing. Leaders curate. They have a clear vision, and they protect it fiercely from anything that dilutes it. They say no to 95% of opportunities, even good ones, to say yes fully to the 5% that actually matter. This looks like sacrifice from the outside, but it's not. It's clarity. When you know where you're going, most paths simply aren't relevant. And declining them isn't sacrifice. It's strategy. The daily reminder. Vision fades without reinforcement. You can have the clearest picture in the world, but if you don't return to it daily, the noise of the present will drown it out. This is why visionary leaders have rituals, morning practices, reflection time, moments where they deliberately reconnect with their vision before engaging with the world. 5 minutes. That's all it takes. Close your eyes. See the future you're building. Feel what it feels like to live in that reality. Remember why it matters. Reconnect with the person you're becoming. Then open your eyes and let that clarity inform your next 12 hours. This isn't mystical. This is mental conditioning. You're programming your subconscious to recognize opportunities aligned with your vision. You're training your mind to filter information through your direction. You're reinforcing the internal structure that keeps you moving forward when obstacles appear. Without this practice, vision becomes vague. With it, vision becomes magnetic. What you see clearly, you move toward automatically. The ultimate truth about vision. Here's what most people miss about vision. It's not about predicting the future. It's about creating it. You don't envision what will happen. You envision what you'll make happen. The future isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's in you, waiting to be built. And the moment you realize that, the moment you understand that vision isn't about seeing destiny, but about choosing direction, everything changes. You stop waiting for clarity to arrive. You create it. You stop hoping circumstances will align. You align circumstances. You stop looking for the right path. You build one. That's the vision mind. That's leadership at the highest level. Not managing what is, creating what could be. Not reacting to reality, designing it. And that capacity lives in you right now, in the thoughts you choose, in the futures you envision, in the clarity you build when everyone else accepts confusion. See beyond what is. Build what could be. Lead yourself toward a future only you can see. That's the mind of a leader. That's the power of vision. Leaders don't predict the future. They create it, one clear thought at a time. Chapter 10. Becoming a leader of thought. Everything has led to this. Not to an ending, to a beginning that only you can create. Every framework you've learned, every mental model you've explored, every shift in perspective you've experienced, none of it was academic. None of it was theoretical. It was all preparation for the person you're about to become. Because leadership has never been about position. It's never been about titles or authority or the ability to command others. Leadership is, and has always been, a quality of mind. And now you know how to build that mind. The distance between who you are and who you'll become is measured in thoughts, not time. Think back to where you started, to the thinking patterns you brought into this experience, the way you processed pressure, the clarity, or lack of it, that guided your decisions. Now think forward, not far, just to tomorrow, to the next moment where pressure arrives, where decisions matter, where clarity determines outcomes. Will you think from elevation or stay trapped at ground level? Will you operate from calm or collapse into chaos? Will you see systems or just isolated problems? Will you decide with precision, vague hoping? That choice, that moment, is where everything changes. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but definitively. Because leadership isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in 1,000 small moments where you choose better thinking over default patterns. The transformation is already happening. Here's something most people miss. Transformation doesn't wait for completion. It begins the moment you choose differently. You don't become a leader after you've mastered every framework. You become a leader the first time you consciously choose elevation over reaction. The first time you create calm in the middle of chaos. The first time you see a system instead of just a problem. Each choice is a vote. Each thought is a signal. Each decision is programming. You're not preparing to become someone who thinks differently. You're becoming that person right now. With every framework you apply, with every pattern you interrupt, with every moment you choose clarity over confusion. The mind you're building isn't waiting in some distant future. It's forming in this present moment. And that's the power you now hold. Not someday power. Now power. The ability to think differently is available to you immediately, not after you finish some training, not after you achieve some milestone. Right now, in the very next thought you have, the practice of becoming. Let me tell you what separates people who read about transformation from people who experience it. Practice. Not perfect practice, not dramatic practice, just consistent, deliberate practice of choosing better thinking patterns. Every morning, you have a choice. You can wake up and let your mind run on default settings, reactive, scattered, emotion-driven. Or you can deliberately engage the frameworks you now have before you check your phone, before you respond to the world, before the noise begins. Ask yourself, what does thinking from elevation look like today? Where will I need calm? What decisions require precision? Where might I see systems instead of isolated events? That's 3 minutes. That's all it takes to activate a different operating system. And every evening, you review, not to judge yourself, to learn. Where did I think like a leader today? Where did I default to old patterns? What will I practice tomorrow? This isn't journaling for therapy. This is cognitive training for performance. You're programming your mind the same way elite athletes program their bodies. Through deliberate, consistent practice of the patterns that create excellence. And just like athletic training, the results compound. What feels awkward today becomes automatic tomorrow. What requires effort this week becomes instinct next month. The compound truth. Here's what most people don't understand about transformation. It's not linear. It's exponential. Small improvements in thinking don't create small improvements in outcomes. They create multiplicative ones. Think about it. If you make decisions just 10% better, that 10% improvement applies to every decision you make, which affects every outcome those decisions create, which shapes every opportunity those outcomes reveal. 10% improvement compounds into completely different trajectories. If you see 10% more clearly, you recognize opportunities others miss. If you remain 10% calmer under pressure, you make choices others can't. If you think 10% more systemically, you solve problems at their source instead of their symptoms. This is why the gap between good leaders and great ones often looks massive. It's not. It's accumulated micro-improvements, compounded over time, creating outcomes that appear miraculous, but are simply mathematical. You're starting that compound now. Every time you apply these frameworks, every time you choose elevation over reaction, every time you think precisely instead of vaguely, you're earning interest that will pay dividends for the rest of your life. The identity you're building. At some point in your journey, something fundamental shifts. You stop trying to think like a leader. You start recognizing, this is how I think now. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but fundamentally, you are someone who elevates above chaos. You are someone who operates from calm. You are someone who makes precise decisions. You are someone who sees systems. You are someone who remains clear under pressure. You are someone who holds vision. That's not aspiration anymore. That's identity. And identity is infinitely more powerful than motivation. Motivation is, I should exercise because it's good for me. Identity is, I exercise because I'm the type of person who values their health. One requires willpower. The other is automatic. When leadership thinking becomes your identity, you don't have to force yourself to think differently. You just do. Because that's who you are now. And who you are determines what you do far more powerfully than what you want, or what you know, or what you intend. Build the identity. One thought at a time. One decision at a time. One moment at a time. Until one day you realize, I'm not trying to become a leader. I am one. The world is waiting. Here's something you need to understand. The world is desperate for people who think clearly. Everywhere you look, chaos, confusion, reactivity. People drowning in noise, making decisions from panic, seeing only what's directly in front of them. And in the middle of that chaos, there's you. Someone who can rise above it. Someone who can remain calm within it. Someone who can see patterns others miss. Someone who can make decisions with clarity when everyone else is paralyzed. That's not theoretical. That's practical, immediate, urgent value. The people around you, your team, your family, your community, they need someone who isn't swept up in every emotional wave. Someone who can think strategically when everyone else is thinking tactically. Someone who sees the long game when everyone else is trapped in the immediate. When you develop the mind of a leader, you don't have to announce it. You don't have to claim it. You don't have to perform it. People feel it. They recognize it. They're drawn to it. Because everyone is looking for someone who seems to have figured out how to think clearly in a world of noise. And when they find that person, they follow them. They trust them. They turn to them. That's leadership. That's influence. That's impact. And it emerges naturally, inevitably, from the quality of your thinking, the responsibility you now carry. With these frameworks comes something important: responsibility. You now have cognitive tools most people don't. Ways of seeing that create advantages others lack. Clarity that allows you to navigate complexity others can't. That's power. Real power. And power always comes with a choice. Will you use it to build or to manipulate? To create value or extract it, to elevate others or exploit them. The frameworks I've given you are neutral. They amplify intention. If your intention is service, they make you a powerful force for good. If your intention is purely self-interest, they make you dangerous. Choose service. Choose contribution. Choose building something that matters beyond yourself. Lead from the question, how can I use this clarity to create value for more than just me? Because the world has enough people wielding power without wisdom. What it desperately needs is leaders who think clearly, choose ethically, and build systems that serve humanity, not just themselves. That's the kind of leader you have the opportunity to become, the kind the world is waiting for. The long game. You're playing. This isn't a sprint. This isn't a hack. This isn't a trick you master and move on from. This is the rest of your life. You're not learning a skill. You're building a mind. You're not adopting a technique. You're transforming how you exist in the world. That transformation unfolds over years, over decades, over a lifetime of deliberate practice. And every single day matters. Not because one day creates the transformation, but because one day creates the pattern. And patterns create identity. And identity creates destiny. Every time you choose elevation over reaction, pattern. Every time you create calm instead of absorbing through chaos, pattern. Every time you think systemically instead of linearly, pattern. And those patterns, repeated consistently, become who you are, not who you're trying to be. Who you are. That's worth the patience. That's worth the discipline. That's worth every uncomfortable moment of growth. Because the person you're building, the leader you're becoming, is someone you'll be proud to be. Someone who leads themselves with the same clarity they could use to lead thousands. Someone who remains unshakable regardless of circumstances. Someone who sees clearly when everyone else is blind. That person is worth everything. The final truth about leadership. Leadership is not about control. It's about clarity. The person who sees most clearly leads. Not because they're louder, not because they're more aggressive, not because they demand followers. They lead because their clarity is magnetic, because their calm is contagious, because their thinking reveals paths others can't see. And all of that, all of it, is built in the mind, not in your title, not in your position, not in your authority, in the quality of your thoughts, in the precision of your mental models, in the clarity with which you see reality. That's the foundation of everything else. The influence, the impact, the ability to create meaningful change, all of it flows from that one source. So build that foundation. Starting today, starting now, starting with the very next thought you choose. Build it in the quiet moments when no one is watching. Build it in the pressure moments when everyone is. Build it thought by thought, decision by decision, day by day. Build it until it's automatic, until it's who you are. Because the world doesn't need more people with leadership titles. It needs more people with leadership minds. People who think clearly when everyone else is confused, who remain calm when everyone else is panicking, who see the path forward when everyone else sees only obstacles. That's the leader we need. That's the leader you're becoming. This is your beginning. You are not your circumstances. You are not your emotions. You are not your past. You are not your limitations. You are the quality of your thinking. And that you can transform. This audiobook has given you the frameworks, the mental models, the cognitive tools, the ways of seeing and thinking and deciding that separate leaders from followers, creators from consumers, architects from drifters. But frameworks are just frameworks until you use them. Knowledge is just knowledge until you apply it. Potential is just potential until you activate it. So activate it. Today. Now. In this moment. Not by making some dramatic declaration. Not by overhauling your entire life overnight. But by choosing one different thought. By applying one framework to one decision. By practicing one moment of elevation, of calm, of precision, of clarity. Just one, and then another, and then another, until what felt like conscious effort becomes unconscious excellence, until what required discipline becomes your nature, until leadership thinking isn't something you do, it's simply who you are. That's the journey. That's the transformation. That's the becoming. And it starts right here, right now, with this choice. The choice to think differently, to see clearly, to lead powerfully. Not someday. Today, not when you're ready. Now. Because you already are ready. You already have everything you need. The frameworks are installed. The understanding is present. The capacity is activated. All that remains is the choice to use what you now have, to become who you now can be, to lead from the mind you're now building. Make that choice every day, every moment, every thought. Build the mind. Become the leader. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of everything. You are the architect of your own thinking. Build something extraordinary. The final shift. The mind you're shaping now is not just a tool. It's the foundation of every future you will ever build. A clear mind becomes a clear path. A strong mind becomes a strong life. A leader's mind becomes a leader's world. You don't need permission to think differently. You don't need perfect conditions to begin. You don't need certainty to move. What you need is exactly what you have right now. A single moment where you choose clarity over noise, elevation over reaction, intention over autopilot. That choice is small, but its consequences are not. Because the future bends toward the mind that shapes it. And every thought you refine, every pattern you strengthen, every decision you craft with intention pulls you toward the person you're becoming. Not suddenly, but undeniably. This is your turning point. Not because everything changes at once, but because you change the way you think. And that quietly changes everything else. Build the mind. Strengthen the clarity. Choose the perspective that a leader would choose, and keep choosing it until the choosing becomes instinct, and the instinct becomes identity. The mind you build today becomes the life you step into tomorrow. So build it with clarity. Build it with courage. Build it with intention. Then step forward and lead your world from the inside out.